One of the ways BlackRock controls the world so well is through its control of the media. Together with Vanguard, an investment company they also partly own, BlackRock now controls 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, 13% of Comcast, who themselves own NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and Sky, and they even own 12% of Disney. This is very important because it means that for any of these companies to decide on company policy, they must now also consult with BlackRock before doing so. And it's just the same with big tech. BlackRock is now the biggest institutional investor in Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and so many more. I mean, the list of their investments in companies is just endless. And by extending its reach in such a dramatic way, BlackRock now has control over more than 90% of the media, which might also be why you've never heard of them. Because controlling the media is a very important step for BlackRock to take over the world. If everyone knew the consequences of BlackRock owning over $9.5 trillion in assets, some questions might start to be raised. And you see, BlackRock's control isn't just extending through information in the media, but also through the entire world's economic and political data. And as I mentioned before, this is all done through Aladdin, where Aladdin accurately predicts the outcome of every single investment. But the question is, where does Aladdin get this information from? Well, that's where things become very jarring. You see, because of BlackRock's ownership of banks, insurance companies, social media giants, and even pension funds, Aladdin now possesses huge amounts of personal data on everyone. Everyone who has ever knowingly or unknowingly given BlackRock money. And with such a powerful tool under their arsenal, everyone now wants a piece of the pie. And by controlling this much data, BlackRock now controls governments, because BlackRock can use this data to sway companies and even government decisions. For example, BlackRock successfully lobbied to get a contract to manage the EU's regulation of banks. However, this backroom deal is now being investigated as BlackRock themselves own the banks they should be regulating. And this is just one of the many examples of these sorts of actions. A 2016 study in the Journal of Finance documented that investment companies like BlackRock show, quote, widespread behind-the-scenes intervention in the companies that they own stakes in. And this problem only gets worse as BlackRock owns stakes in nearly all major publicly traded companies. And now with our current recession, BlackRock is buying as much homes and real estate as possible, causing regular house prices to skyrocket. BlackRock profits when a society doesn't own their homes but rents, because BlackRock can squeeze even more money out of the economy through mortgaging off these artificially inflated homes. But this whole situation becomes even more sinister when you realize BlackRock's power is now being compromised by other actors. For example, in August 2020, BlackRock became the first foreign company to be allowed access into China's mutual fund industry. This means that BlackRock can now invest and own parts of Chinese companies. God only knows what BlackRock promised Xi Jinping if they're allowed in, but by being allowed in, BlackRock now works with companies that are blacklisted by the US. One example is BlackRock's investment in a CCP-owned company called Hikvision. Hikvision makes security and communications technology for both civilian and military use by the Chinese government, and they're also known for their wide-scale human rights abuses.
How do you think your facial recognition technology will change China?
Everything happened in the public can be recorded.
Now, this money being invested into China isn't just BlackRock's own money. Most of this money comes from the pension funds and bank accounts that ordinary people pay into BlackRock inadvertently. Through BlackRock controlling banks, people have no choice about whether they give BlackRock and the CCP this money. That's if they even know about BlackRock. This recent trend of BlackRock funding authoritarian regimes can only mean bad things for Western democracy, because this empowers regimes like China and Russia. It gives credence to dystopian regimes. And this trend is now promoting others to do the same. I mean, BlackRock recently recommended that their investors triple their investments in China. This would place billions more into a dystopian regime at the expense of the West. And the worst part is that China sees the companies that operate within it as simply extensions of the one-party state. They own these companies, and in return, the companies act out the CCP's will, which is a worrying fact when you consider that BlackRock owns the entire world's data. TikTok's data harvesting is nothing compared to BlackRock's. BlackRock knows the entire world's bank details, their preferences, tastes. It sets social trends, it oversees entire countries. So any increase in Chinese investments will see not just BlackRock's influence grow, but also China's influence grow in BlackRock. Since August of 2020, when BlackRock were first allowed into the Chinese economy, they have only poured more and more money into these Chinese companies. Clearly, Aladdin the supercomputer sees this as a profitable move, but what it might not see is the destruction of Western values. It might not see how the CCP could influence the world economy and global politics even more than it already is. It might not see that BlackRock's huge investments will be the catalyst towards this change. I mean, who knows how much more BlackRock will invest in China? But if their growth over the past year is a sign of anything, China will inevitably become a much bigger part of BlackRock's future. And make no mistake, this will have dire consequences. But the cherry on top of all of this is that BlackRock is the main force behind the sheepish woke lecturing that tells you how guilty you should feel. In 2018, around the dawn of the new generation of political correctness, Larry wrote a letter telling all the companies under his thumb to, quote, contribute to society or risk losing our support, adding that, quote, society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. Which is a very interesting statement coming from a company that is quite literally funding the persecution of Uyghur Muslims and the imprisonment of the Chinese population. A company that is funding a dystopic nuclear regime that is quite literally threatening the very fabric of Western civilization. And so with BlackRock's push for, quote, social purposes, companies now have an ESG score, or in other words, sustainable investing scores, where you have a rating system based on your company's political and social facades. So for example, doing a woke ad for a company like Nike, or silencing any controversial political views on social media will help you get the high ESG score.
They will, on their investor relations page, they'll show you their ESG score. ESG stands for environmental, social, corporate governance. And this is where the woke culture comes from. So they've created this kind of phony baloney rating system that says, well, if you, I'm exaggerating, but if you mention that you are, have a green agenda and you believe in carbon credits and you might trade some credits somewhere, then you get a higher score and therefore you're more investable. And it's very interesting to see how big investors like insurance company, institutional investors, they are steering away from anything that does not have the right ESG rating.
And if the past tells us anything, it seems like BlackRock is only destined to control more and more of our daily lives. Through Larry Fink's close ties with government leaders around the world, with his huge influence over the World Economic Forum, and his position on the boards of the Council on Foreign Relations, BlackRock is only destined to metastasize. So perhaps BlackRock defines the new era of our globalized world, where ruthless, predatory corporations amass more power than countries, where our politics and society isn't dictated by votes, it's dictated by investment boards controlled by BlackRock, delivering us a more generic, mindless, vapid, and vicious culture. Perhaps BlackRock is just a monument to a world divided between too big to fail companies and powerless, moneyless, and joyless citizens, where companies like BlackRock buy up all our houses, inflating our currencies and profit from our conflicts and turmoil. That's why you can't buy a house. That's why we're more divided than ever. That's why too big to fail companies are defining life in the 2020s. Because we no longer live under free market capitalism, we live under a system for socialism for the rich.